So just for the record then, your books are under the name Lucinda Clarke?
Correct, yes, that's right.
So I think what we can do, maybe just start with you explaining a little bit about your writing life and what you've written and what your approach is, and then we can go from there. I don't know, I think Bertold probably did this. I went and bought your the first book in your series of 1 Year in the Life, the book about Leah. So I read that, so I have a little bit of knowledge of what you've done, but I haven't gone any further than that. I don't know if Richard or Audrey read anything.
Actually, I'm about 1/3 through Truth, Lies, and Propaganda. Loving it, by the way. Absolutely.
Thank you.
And that's the first book, the first year to Truth, Lies, and Propaganda.
And it's all true, which is a bit scary, really.
Yeah.
Oh, now I need to read that.
It really rings very authentic, and so I knew every bit of it. So, like I said, I'm definitely impressed. It's got, I think, all the elements I do love in something like that, which is, it's got suspense and drama. I mean, the whole thing in Libya. It's got humor. I don't want to ask on this, but now I'm curious about the Mary Had a Little Lamb versions that they had to make. But yeah, I mean, it is just wonderful. It's got just nuggets of real person. The things that when we get to discuss the things that I think most of us as writers face, and a little bit more about just your experience, your personal experience. So a lot of that is relatable, and that's why I think so it's got all those great elements, and also some details about an industry that I knew little about. So.
Well, when I entered it, I knew very little about it too. So
yeah, I know.
On the job.
You found out after a year what your title was, so I thought that was great. So, yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about what your writing life is? What is your?
Okay, well, it goes back a long, long way, but not as most, not in what I'm doing at the moment. I always wanted to write. We all say that. We all know that from so high. But it wasn't until I was living in Benghazi in Libya that I sort of fell into writing, into working on radio. And I was actually writing my own links, and then I did various programs and so on, and book readings and such like. But then when we left there and we moved to Botswana, and then we went on to South Africa, I thought, well, that was my fling in the media over and done with. And then I got sacked from my teaching job. Don't know why to this day. I didn't steal the dinner money, I promise. But anyway, one thing led to another. Somebody on the staff was married to somebody at South African Broadcasting Corporation, suggested I went for an audition. I failed the continuity audition because I pronounced everything wrong, and they said, who's this important person? And I said, well, she's an opera singer, but she was actually a member of parliament, which was a bit embarrassing. And anyway, I then started, I was asked then to write some scripts for radio. So I wrote hundreds of those, and bit by bit I fell into television. I wrote lots of television scripts, mainly education-based to start with. And then I moved, and then I went down to live in Durban on a boat that was actually sinking, but let's not worry about that. And then I started working for the municipality. They had an in-house video unit, so I did lots and lots of videos for them, and then I did lots of videos. A lot of them are covered in Truth, Lies, and Propaganda for them. And then, because things were getting a little bit, I didn't want to retire. I loved my life. I loved the writing, and then the going out and directing and producing and putting the whole thing together in the studio and so on and so forth. But it sort of, South Africa was getting a little bit on the dodgy side, and I was getting sidelined because they wanted Black economic empowerment, and they noticed I wasn't Black, much to my amazement. And so we jumped on a plane and we decided to come and retire in Spain. Well, after about 6 months, I was crawling the walls. I couldn't stop writing. Well, that's obviously what I wanted to do. So I started right at the very bottom writing books. I'd had a couple of educational books published by Heinemann and Macmillan in 1990, but this was a whole different ball game. So I thought, well, this is the one thing I can do at home, and I started. And I've not hit the heights by any means, but I'm 16 books in now, and I just love it. But the marketing, oh no, not I hate that, and I'm hopeless at it. But that's basically where I am today. I couldn't stop writing if I tried.
Are your
And
are your books published by a publisher, or are you independently published or self-published?
I'm independently published, and I made I thought about calling up the old agents. Well, she's probably pushing up daisies now. She was older than me. But then I thought about the time scale. I mean, I'm getting on a lot. And I thought, if I try, not that my books necessarily would be accepted by any agents or any publishers at all, but I thought, I've got a limited amount of time, and it takes 18 months to get a book, from being accepted to actually get out there and print. And I thought, have I got that amount of time to waste? I thought, I haven't. So I opted for Amazon self-publishing. And I mean, much as we all moan and groan about them, they have given us that opportunity, which is brilliant. So yeah, they're all self-published now.
I was just reading a blog post by you, I guess, that was on Charles French's blog, where you talked about not writing to the market and how that has, what the consequences were of that.
Well, yes, I've shot myself in the foot because, as I said, I started right at the bottom, and I didn't know anybody. I didn't even know you had to market it, Audrey. I had walking over eggshells out there for a year and thought, I've sold 9 copies. That's very good, isn't it? Because I didn't tell anybody about it, because I wrote it under a pen name because it's a bit sensitive. So it wasn't until I got hold of somebody, noticed the back of their book, that they were in a particular Facebook group, that I contacted him, and he said, well, yes, you've got to get out there in the marketplace and talk to people. But by that time, I had already shot myself in the foot by delving into what's now 4 different genres. So I've done the 3 biographies. I've done the one humour, which is very British, doesn't appeal to everybody. It's a Marmite book. I've done 5 African adventure series, and I've done the 4 psychological thrillers. And I've discovered that the psychological thrillers have outsold everything else put together. So I'm sort of writing for market now, because I want to make a bit of money if I can.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain genres that work and certain genres that don't seem to work, and that's probably one of them.
Yeah. I
So,
didn't really want. Yeah, go on.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I didn't really want to write sort of cozy mysteries, and I didn't want to sort of do the normal drama thing, because I'm not very good at that kind of thing. So I thought psychological thrillers are probably, the route to go. And I'm very happy with how they performed, actually, because I've got a lot of read through. So a lot of people who get to the end of Lear, book 1, think, well, is she twisting my mind or isn't she? And then I put the beginning of book 2 in there, and it answers all the questions, but it takes the story on.
So it's an interesting thing that you're doing, because Audrey has done something kind of like this. She has written a number of novels based around a certain character, and then she just published a collection of short stories, half of which kind of fill in a little bit on some of the characters that you see in her books. And one of the interesting things for me about that is, sometimes I read a book, and at the end of the book, I just want more. I want more about those characters or something. And so Audrey's done it one way, and you've done it a different way, where, again, judging by the first book and what you put in about the second book, you basically now have a series of books that take a year in the life of different characters in the same storyline. Is that accurate?
That is accurate, and people have asked me to write book 5. A, I've partially run out of characters, and B, I'm not quite sure what I can possibly throw at them now that I haven't already thrown at them, apart from burying them alive and wrecking the brakes and, one thing and dead dogs on the doorstep type thing. I mean, if I can think of more horrific situations to put them in, then I will do the next book. But as I say, I've almost run out of characters.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure.
So what made you decide to do that?
I think just by looking at how people were selling, you know, what was at the top of the charts, and also the stuff that's come on, possibly on TV.
But I mean, each book is about a different character in the same story.
Family. Yeah, it's almost like a family saga. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just got to the end of the first book, didn't really think about going any further. And because it was doing relatively well, I thought, well, why not? And then I had an idea and it followed on from there. So, and everybody says write in series. I mean, if you're going to get a book, Bob, heaven forbid, you need people to read on. So you put the first one at 99 cents and then you shove your price all the way up to $2.99, which won't buy you a coffee, but people might just buy a book.
Yeah.
Yeah, they prefer free though. Free or maybe 99, but yeah, I know.
Well, the first one is 99 cents, yes. So, I mean, that doesn't break the bank. But I don't know if you've seen how often on Facebook people write quite cheerfully, oh, I'm not prepared to pay for books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The internet is supposed to be free. And if you get it on the internet, you're not supposed to have to pay for it.
And they say, well, I'll get it at the local library. But in fact, you're actually paying for your local library with your what you call council taxes or property taxes or whatever. So you are actually paying for it, but they're not aware of it because, you know, so much goes to the roads or so much goes to the schools and whatever. But you are paying for your libraries indirectly.
I think there's an impression that anyone who writes a book must be making money, you know. So yeah.
I don't know if you get asked that, but we're in like sort of expatriate society here, and we do obviously socialize with a lot of English people, or English-speaking people, I should say. And you would think that by writing books, I had a socially unacceptable disease because nobody mentions it. Nobody asks what I'm doing. Nobody's asked what genre it is. Nobody says, oh, have you got a book to sell? Occasionally, I'll take a book if we're going out to a smart dinner party as a present for the hostess. She never asks me to sign it. I can just see it's going straight to the charity shop tomorrow. You know, I don't know. Maybe some of them do read, but I don't talk about my books.
So I do talk about my books, but nobody wants to hear that. You know, I try to work it into conversations, and you know, and here's the book again. So yeah.
It's a really strange thing. I mean, I used to work in a library, and my immediate colleagues in the office knew that I had written and published myself a bunch of books. And the library even had a local authors, emerging authors program where people who had written and published books could contribute them to the collection. And they even had like a little reception for all of us. It was an annual thing. And so I did put some of my books in there. But the colleagues they'd never talk about books to me, about my books. It was so strange. It was almost like it was an unmentionable thing, as though I'd been in jail or something, and or I had a disease, and you just don't talk to people about stuff like that.
What did you describe it as? I'm sorry, Dee, what did you describe it as though you had this
unacceptable social disease?
Yes, exactly. It's like the I forget what movie where, you know, whenever someone brings up, you don't say it out loud at the dinner table, whisper it. It's the same thing. You're a writer. Oh, well, let's talk about something else. We're not allowed to talk about that.
I have a little anecdote happened a month ago. Someone at work set up, someone in a little higher up than me, set up a meeting with me and gave the topic about one of the projects that was going on. So I got everything ready, and I was expecting to answer all these questions, and she logs on the meeting. It's just me and her. And she says, okay, I wanted to have this meeting because I read your book and I loved it. I wanted to talk about it. I'm like, well, why did you have to mask it in a secret meeting? Like, you know, I didn't care at that point, but that is a true story.
That was it was encrypted and
right, you know, don't record it. Yeah. So I don't know what it is.
I don't know. They almost seem embarrassed about it somehow. Occasionally I'll get, well, are you still scribbling? And I'll say, yes. And I'm sort of waiting and think perhaps I can just tell them what I'm doing. But no, absolutely nothing. But you're all in the States, aren't you?
Yes.
I'm in Canada.
Audrey's
You're in Canada.
Yeah.
So you might understand a little bit, Audrey, but I have a lot of difficulty getting books, the print books here. You know, by the time I bought them at author things, and then the postage, which is phenomenal. I've tried a couple of sitting at tables at the odd Christmas fair, but it's been a disaster. Because people here go to the charity shops and they buy a whole pile of books by, you know, Lee Child and Wilbur Smith and Jeffrey Archer for 25 cents each. I'm not going to sit there with a book at 10 euros and expect them to buy.
Yeah. I did a thing, the last book I published, I ordered 20 author copies from Amazon. It took 2 months for them to show up. And when I finally got them, I took a picture of them, and just spur of the moment, I posted the picture on Facebook and said, okay, if you're local, $10 autographed personal delivery. And a few people weren't local but offered to pay for the postage too, and so I sold over 25 copies that way within like 2 days.
Gosh.
Way more than I expected, but you know, I've thought about doing the table thing or doing a book signing or a book reading somewhere, and it's just not something that appeals to me, so I've never done anything like that.
What genre do you write? Mark, sorry.
It's mostly literary. The one that I just published, it could be marketed as a young adult story because it's about two 16-year-olds and a 20-year-old, and basically kind of coming of age for all three of them at the same time. So.
And do you find, I presume we're all independently published, are we?
Yes.
Do you find there's a big snob value about, well, of course you have to do that because nobody will actually take you on as a publisher?
I don't get that from anybody in my life. Most of the people that I know are very congratulatory and impressed that I publish things. It's more what I see, in social media, on Twitter, or other places where there are just certain people who, oh, you're independently published. Well, it's because your story was crap and no one would have wanted it, so that's why you have to do that way. And there are a lot of certain readers that just won't buy independently published books.
There are.
Yeah.
People in my book club, for example, I mean, the books they choose to read every month, I'm known as the black sheep of the book club because I don't like any of them. Sort of groan when I actually go on Amazon and say, oh, it's won this prize and won that prize. And then I start reading the look inside. And very often I just go and busk it, to be quite honest. I'll get the sample, read the sample, and then, mutter my way through the whole meeting because they're just to my mind, nothing. I mean, there's no hook, there's no excitement, there's no, a lot of them don't move, but because they were in the Sunday Times bestseller or, NYT, they've got to be good. And I'm saying, actually, it doesn't work like that. The publishers are taking what they think will sell. We'll give Prince Harry $29 million because we think we're going to make a lot of money for it. It doesn't matter whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. It's going to dish up a bit of dirt, and when you think of all the writers they could actually pay even $500 to for that $29 million, it makes me want to cry.
Yeah.
It's we live with it, I guess.
Excuse me, I have to go let the dog out. I can hear her whining, so I'll be back.
So can I learn a bit about you then? What are you all doing?
You want to start, Bertold?
Yeah, I mainly write sci-fi and a little bit of sort of mild horror, but otherwise, my main genre is writing sci-fi books. And I also write a blog where I do reviews, and I try to review as many indie type books as I can, because in general, I just find them to be more interesting.
Bertold is one of the biggest supporters of indie writers out there.
Yes, extremely.
Thank you.
May I suggest that you invite Sally Cronin? You must know her, Audrey, don't you? I mean, she's just amazing.
Yeah,
she's she's another really big supporter too. She's amazing.
Who wants to go next? Richard?
What are you doing?
Oh, she wanted to know a little bit about what we're all doing, what we write.
Okay,
Go ahead.
well, I'm writing book number 6, sort of in the series, well, sort of an adjunct to the series I wrote, the Herbert West series. That's 4 books. And then there's sort of a little spin-off 2 books that I'm writing the 2nd one of. And this will definitely be the last of the books in that milieu, because like you, I kind of run out of things to say, and I really would like to try something different. So, so I'm going to wrap this up. I'm about 9/10 of the way through the first draft, so it'll take a while yet. It's been a tough first draft because I kept adding things and changing things as I went along and making notes to myself saying, do this in the rewrite. And so I'm doing all that. Anyway, once I'm finished with that, that'll be 6 books that I've published, plus the short stories. And I'm going to see what else I can do. I'm going to experiment with who knows what. So that's where I'm at.
And what genre, Audrey?
Well, that's the thing. My genre it's sort of vaguely paranormal, but it's also quite a lot of psychological stuff. So I have my first 4 books, the series were sort of inspired by a kind of a grim horror story by this dude called H.P. Lovecraft, who lived in the early 20th century. And they were about this guy called Herbert West, who figured out a way to bring dead people back to life scientifically, except it didn't work very well. And there's been a movie made based on that that's really, well, it's a cult classic, but I think it's really pretty awful. It's just on body horror and general grossness. So I took it in a different direction. And I looked at why would someone want to be associated with a person like this? And how would a person who had this ability, and the ability changed over the books, how, what are these people like? How do they react? Why do they do things, etc.? And then, of course, not having any idea about genres or being consistent or writing to any market, I kind of brought the whole story here where I live, to the West Coast temporarily. And then I took it back to this fictional place in Eastern North America in New England and kind of wrapped it up. So I took the guy from when you first meet him to when he finishes up. And then I decided, I think somebody who wrote a review of one of the books said, it'd be really nice if you looked at this aspect. So I thought, okay, fine. So I had this little thing where the guy had gone to Egypt at a certain time and had a little adventure there. So I had that. And then I took a person who turned out to be his granddaughter, and she goes to Egypt and kind of has her own adventure. And that's the first of the 2 books that the 2-book set, of which I'm writing the 2nd one now. And we're in Egypt again and having yet another adventure. And they do have supernatural elements, but I have to admit the supernatural thing I haven't delved into as much as maybe I should have. I've gone more with personalities and the nature of the characters and so on. So it's kind of a weird mix-up of supernatural and literary. And that's, I guess, the best I can do to describe it.
I have 2 books out. Both are comedy fantasies. And I should tell you, because you made a mention before, I am heavily influenced by British authors, especially in comedy. And, it's just everything from Woodhouse to Neil Gaiman, et cetera. It's just, I really get a kick out of it, but it influenced me. I started writing, it's vaguely similar to you, very young, but I only did it for friends, only wrote things to express. And at some point, very late in life, I have a problem with completion. So I just wanted to get something done, something creative done to completion. And I thought, you've several times tried to write a book, do that. And I did. And then I found out that self-publishing had changed quite a bit, because like you, I don't have I'm in my 60s and I really don't have the time to start a career like that. So I decided, let me look at self-publishing, and it changed drastically from before, where you had to put up so much money just to get X copies. It's just point and click. So I did it, and I was really for my friends. I was going to tell them about it, and I put it up there, and I did tell 1 or 2, and then suddenly someone I didn't even know reviewed it and loved it. And so the first thing I did was clean it up because I didn't think anyone would ever
Put some
see it. So
commas
my
in.
friends, right? I was like, oh gosh. So I did that, and it's gotten relatively good reviews. And then during COVID, I decided to do another one, and I'm kind of working on a third one now. But yeah, so it was really more about self-expression and just getting what I had in my mind onto paper and then out to the world, than considering it as changing my current career. So although, if I could, I think I would right now. I get a lot more enjoyment out of it. So
Unlike all of you, I didn't grow up wanting to write. In fact, I hated writing. I think we've had this conversation before. I hated writing. I thought I was a horrible writer, but I had this idea that someday I wanted to try to see if I could write a novel. So almost 20 years ago, I had an idea and I outlined it in my head on the way home from work, and I started writing it, and that's what started me writing. That novel is a courtroom drama in a small town in California. It's the only book that I've really made any money on, because it's in one of those genres that people will read even if it's independently published. But since then, I've moved more towards literary stuff, and I think, like you, different genres. I wrote a lot of short stories. I don't write as many now, but I write short stories that are science fiction, or all sorts of different things. Part of the thing for me when with writing is I want to keep trying different things, different kinds of genres. So like I said, the one that I just published, it's kind of literary young adult fiction. The story that I'm working on right now is kind of dystopian. Basically about some point in the near future when a president is elected and almost immediately declares martial law and essentially becomes a dictator, and then proceeds to more or less destroy the country. So that's what I'm working on now. And again, I like to do different things, so I can't say I write in this genre or that genre.
Yeah.
So
I feel a bit of a schizophrenic because I can't not write. I earned my living doing it from 1986, and supported a husband, 2 children, a St. Bernard, several fluffies, cat, being Africa, our live-in housekeeper plus her family, plus the outdoor staff and their family. So I couldn't not write if I didn't want to. But on the other hand, it's so tempting to write in a way what you really want to write. But on the other hand, you want to share it with people. Therefore, you want lots of people to buy it. So that sort of confines you, doesn't it? That sort of tells you, well, if you go on writing that kind of thing, nobody's going to buy it, even if you had fun writing it. It's out there, but what the heck, who cares? And on the other hand, you want to get into a genre where people will say, oh, that's the flavor of the month. And I'm just hoping that when psychological thrillers are not the flavor of the month anymore, that everyone's ready to jump onto the next bandwagon. Because I mean, we're knee deep in not so much sci-fi, that's been around a long time, but sort of once The Hobbit came out, everybody was doing Hobbit clone things, and once Shrek came out, everybody was doing clone things, and so on. And it's just a question of being one step ahead of the pack.
it's like when the book Gone Girl came out. I don't know if you read Gone Girl, but suddenly there was Gone Girl, there was Girl on the Train, Girl.
Oh yes, yeah.
It just suddenly there became this laundry list of novels based on women who are, dealing with something weird. I don't know how to describe it, but that was the thing for a while. I don't know what the next thing is going to be. So you mentioned, I'm curious, what kind of I think all of us hate marketing and PR stuff, but what kind of marketing and PR stuff have you tried?
All of it. One time or another, badly, and I gave up after a while. At the moment, I've tried Amazon ads, but they got so complicated because I'm not very bright. They got so complicated that I I was paying Amazon on one hand and they were giving me royalties in the other. But in fact, when the balance twisted. You know, they were really getting, I was paying them to just put my books up there. So I've had 2 book bubs, and that's great for a spike for a short time. But what else? Unlike Audrey, who is really consistent, I was blogging like mad twice a week, and I'm afraid that's fallen away because I haven't. I got a PA to do tweets for me, but my feeling is that if you're going to tweet and you're going to blog, you need to do it yourself because it's your voice and you need to connect. And I've got perhaps a weird way of talking or a weird way of connecting with people that is not going to come across from a PA. It just didn't sort of work that way. At the moment, now wait for this, is really exciting, this is. I have got my very own Facebook marketing expert in Portugal called David. And David sends me sort of semi-love letters about twice a week for our next meeting. And he then talks me through on a split screen on how to set up my Facebook ads. And he's very sweet. They're not too bad. I think they're possibly working at the moment, but I've dropped everything else right now. So I'm just working on Facebook ads. And what else? Nothing much else at the moment. As I say, I gave up on the blogging. I wasn't sure whether I was getting any, sales from that. Yeah. And I was doing 2 blogs. One was a sort of general 3-part one, and one was a review of other indie books. I think that passing it on and doing things for other people has been a big help in the past because I've mentored quite a lot of people on and off. But yeah, that's about it right now.
I was thinking yesterday, I think I'm going to write a post for this blog about social media and whether or not it actually does anything for authors like us. So I was just curious what your experience was.
Yeah, I think Facebook is really helpful because I've made a lot of connections. And in fact, my other half thinks I'm a bit weird because I've got more online friends than I have friends that I actually face to face in real life. And they'll say, "What are you doing?" I'll say, "Oh, I'm just chatting to somebody in Buenos Aires." And then 10 minutes later, "Oh, well, so-and-so's just gone to Japan and they're telling me about this." I mean, most times there are other writers and occasionally readers. And that's really how I've connected with people. And I haven't done many podcasts because, I mean, if you look gorgeous on podcasts, I think it helps, but, maybe, I'm not sure. But Facebook, yes, I'm in some fabulous Facebook groups and we'll really help each other. If I want to ask a question, then they will come back with lots of suggestions and so on and so forth. And I've got a team of beta readers as well. But yeah, I think that's probably about it. I just go mad on something for a while and I'll go on to all the various 35-book throw, Book Gorilla, or can't think of them. I'm absolutely brain dead. All the ones. I've stopped entering competitions. I thought the only thing they're good for really is if you have a bad day and your sales slump and you're down at 1,500,000, you go and you look at the few medals you've got and you feel better for a short while. But yeah, I think Facebook, if anything, because I think that's the age group my genre are looking at. Whereas you, Mark, might well go for TikTok or something if you're looking for the younger.
Oh, please, no. I tried an Amazon ad with this new book and it produced absolutely no sales. And I tried another, I forget what it was, kind of like BookBub, where they have their email list and they feature your book on a given day. I tried that, absolutely no sales. So, and the whole social media thing, I think the point of what I'm going to write is that, when I started writing and then thought about publishing it, all I heard was you have to have a social media presence, you have to have a blog, you have to be on Twitter, you have to be all this stuff. And I know one guy who actually had a publishing contract with a small publisher. He wrote Cozy Mysteries and they published his first 2 books. And then after that, they said, nope, we're not going to publish you anymore because you don't have a big enough social media presence. I basically the people who buy my books are essentially some friends and family who know I write, and then a bunch of people like you who I've made connections with through blogging and Twitter. But it's a total that can be counted in the dozens, not in the hundreds. And so, you know, I just don't think, unless you develop a relationship with somebody, social media doesn't do anything more than if I were to walk down the street saying, here's my book, does anybody want it?
There are two things I'm actually doing at the moment, and I think they might well be paying off. I'm paying, I have a monthly newsletter, which I send out, and I've been doing that for 3 or 4 years. I've come across a company called Prolific Works, which used to be Insta Freebie. Now, for $20 a month, you can put your book on one of their free books. You know, you put your ebook up, 1 or 2, it doesn't really matter. And then you join a group, and they send out emails, and the people download that free book. And then hopefully, if it's in a series, people go on to buy the rest. And they agree to put their name on your email list, right, for doing that. Now, I just before we came on, I had an email from MailChimp, who I hate with a passion, to say that I've had 19 new subscribers since the 2nd of August from Prolific Works. However, I've had 90, it's 90, from voracious readers. And for $15 a month, I think it is, I also give Leah Book 1 away for free. And I'm getting reviews with that, because some of them just read the book and unsubscribe the moment the first newsletter comes through. But I'm getting reviews, I'm getting feedback, I'm getting emails from people saying, you know, that they enjoyed it. And that I've now built my email list up to just over 2,000. It's not a lot in comparison to a lot of people, but it means that at the end of every month, I write this newsletter with a competition to win a freebie that I haven't published, but I autograph and I post with a bookmark and a pen. You know, I have a range of pens that I have my name on. And I put cartoons in there, and I promote a couple of books in there that I've read this month and say I thought they were good reads, and just a little bit about what I've been up to. And I'm having fewer and fewer unsubscribes now, but I think, oh, Zoom's about to kick us out.
Yeah, we're about to end.
Oh, shame. Sorry. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Not your fault, not your fault at all.
Right.
So,
That's what you're here for.
yeah.
I really appreciate you making a different time for me. I really do, because that was fantastic. Because I'm about to go in a few minutes now. I'm about to go out to dinner with friends.
Good.
So it's just quite,
Okay.
not 10
Thank you
o'clock
for
in the morning
joining
for me.
us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.